So for this video, I want to make a comparison. I want to make a point. And the point that I want to make is, I guess you would call it the breath of the wildification of open world games. That is a horrible terms. But there is this iconic moment in Breath of the Wild when you first get out of the little cave that you're in, where you get the world revealed to you. Matter of fact, you know what? We're going to take a look at it just so that we all can go through the memories. By the way, this is a PC mod because the original videos are from the Switch and they're like 720p. So at least this one can kind of bring it up to a more visually pleasing sort of rendition. So this moment right here, I think is probably going to be one of the most iconic moments in gaming for the next 35 years, right? Like this moment is so freaking cool. And I think this is where they give you the first title card. But I just want to talk about this because this was so impactful when I played the game. Obviously, I saw this moment happen because I played the game years later. So I've seen this moment happen before on like, different YouTube videos. I think they even may have had it in the trailer. But when I was playing the game, I realized the importance of this moment because I think it speaks to a promise. It speaks to the fact that this is a world that was crafted for you and that most importantly trusts you to go and explore it. So I think when we are talking, about a lot of um Ubisoft games, and we talk about the Ubisoft formula. I was asking myself, why does Breath of the Wild hit in such a way? Why does this world feel so organic, so much more pleasant, so much more relaxed, so much more enjoyable in a really spiritual way, in a mindful way? And I was thinking, what's the difference? What did it do that a game like a Far Cry didn't do, or a game like the modern day Assassin's Creed don't do? And I realize is that the Assassin's Creed worlds, the Ubisoft world, doesn't trust their players to enjoy them. And what I mean by that is that they never trust the fact that if they just let go of your attention or demanding your attention every 30 seconds or so, then they don't trust that you are going to keep playing the game, that you're going to keep enjoying your experience in the game. It's almost like they want to handhold you all of the way because they are so terrified that if they let go of your hand, you're simply going to walk away, right? And I feel that in a really palpable way when I think about my experiences with Ubisoft games, because I think the idea by something that's called the 15-second rule, or is maybe the 30-second rule in games, which is basically that as you explore an open world game, every 15 seconds, there must be something interesting for you to do, for you to find, for you to interact with. And the idea is so that you don't get bored. But then when I think about the most pleasant open worlds that I love, they are the ones that allow me to get bored. They are the ones that allow me to simply breathe. Like Breath of the Wild is such a fantastic title because that's really what it feels like. It feels like a breath. And it really feels like this world will trust you to go and interact with it. So today, as I'm watching the Ghost of Yotei state of play, which was fantastic by the way, 10 out of 10 for what they wanted to achieve, I saw this iconic moment, and I mean, of course, they ripped it off Breath of the Wild, right? I mean, I think they should, and I think this moment was also in Ghost of Tsushima as well. But
Made,
when I saw this
but it's
part,
also a game that at its heart is inspired by so many of our favorite wandering samurai films.
it just
So let's start off by talking
instantly,
about exploration.
it just instantly took me back to my Breath of the Wild moment. I was like, this is it. This is going to be the Breath of the Wild ification of the Ghost series. And when I look back and I think about it, I think that Ghost of Tsushima had many of the same um I want to say many of the same mechanics, many of the same designs. But if my memory serves, and my goodness, I'm working on so many years back since I even last touched it. But if my memory serves, there was still like these heavy plumes of smoke, these really attention grabbing features in the landscape that it tried to be an in-between. It didn't necessarily trust you as much as Breath of the Wild did to keep exploring, even if it didn't obviously put something in front of you, but at the same time, it didn't want to weigh you down so heavily with like the developer's intent. Oh, look over here, look over there, look over there. We have all these things to do. So it works somewhere in between. And I think that finally, Ghost of Yotei is like the developer maturing and be like, no, people actually like our game. People actually want to play our game. They have intrinsic motivation to live and breathe in this game. And the as soon as I saw this moment, I thought this is Ghost of the Wild. This is the best elements of what Nintendo was able to achieve put into the world of Ghost of Yotei. And I just think it's so fantastic. And we could go through the whole state of play by play. I'm not sure if that's necessarily like the most interesting of things because personally for me, I kind of found myself disappointed with the reaction of other YouTubers when they give like a state of play reaction or a game deep dive reaction. Usually, I just find that there's something so immature about it, and that sounds very like what is it? Almost stuck up of me, almost snarky, but I don't even mean it that way. Like in a really humble way. I found myself let down by that type of content, and I'm not sure if I would do a better job necessarily of giving a such of like depth to what it is. I always feel like the reaction that I want to have is from the developer's perspective, talking about the decisions that they made, not necessarily give us any further insight into like what the game will be or giving spoilers or anything like that, but to really talk about the thoughtful design that goes into why don't we have more attention grabbing things. But let me just I guess continue on this wave. I really think that Breath of the Wild is one of the most majestic game worlds to inhabit. I absolutely love that world, right? Because again, it just has this innate trust, this innate ability to let you wander, to let you. I remember there's a dragon in Breath of the Wild, and every night the dragon comes out, and then one day I'm in a different area, I'm in a mountain, and I see a dragon just flying in the sky. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, I thought back to many, many playtimes hours, like 40 playtimes hours, like way earlier. And I thought I had seen like a snake like creature, but I was so far away from it, flying through the sky. And I was like, huh, what was that? But it was only like a mere glimpse. I was in the middle of something else and everything like that. But I was like, it's whatever, right? Like, it is what it is. Maybe it's just like a thing that is so far away that it's like part of a nightscape or something like that. I didn't pay much attention, but it kind of just stuck in my mind. And then now I am, and I'm trying to like again fight this enemy or whatever, and then a dragon pops out, and it's like super close. It's so close, in fact, that I know there is going to be an interaction that is possible with that dragon. I'm like, I think if I climb a little bit higher, I can get to that dragon. But I haven't looked into this, and I could be wrong. But what I believe right now is that every night that dragon comes out every night for all of your playtime. The dragon just goes and does this little, cruise around the world. And you could always, well, not that you could always interact with it, but the point is that the interaction is possible from the beginning of the game. But the game doesn't force you there. It doesn't tell you that. It doesn't put it as a icon on the map. It just simply lets it be. Like this world trusts that you will eventually explore it and stumble across it and be curious about it. Now, obviously, if you want to look at the guide and everything like that, sure, that's completely up to you. But within the game design, the game world has no indication. I don't think there's a single NPC that actually comments on the presence of these dragons. There are no clues, there are no markers. And I mean, if there were, I completely missed them. But the point is, there has this fantastic moment and it's completely missable. It's completely skippable. You could have played the entire game and never looked up and interacted with that dragon for whatever reason, but the game had it anyway, and it trusted me to stumble across it. And that's how it happened for me, and it was such a fantastic thing, fantastic time when it did. I absolutely loved it. I think, by the way, there's more than one dragon, so I think there's three in total in that one. But again, it's been a long time and I could be wrong about that. The point is though, I absolutely loved that moment when I was playing Breath of the Wild. And when I was playing Horizon Forbidden West, a game that I loved, one of the biggest disappointments for me was that when I opened the minimap, it was immediately going on to, you know, again, the Ubisification of an open world, like it just had icons and question marks and everything. And I was like, why do you need this? Why do you like your game is so fun? Your game is so inherently interesting. I don't mind I don't mind a quest marker for the primary path. Like, there are many ways to do this kind of world design where you can be, just lost in exploration. We have things like Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring, which I think kind of stand on one side with really minimal markings. I think Elden Ring has even less like markings and kind of like assistance for the player than than Breath of the Wild does. I think Breath of the Wild is a really great balance for what the experience is trying to give you. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have things like Ubisoft games, where they typically try to mark as many things as possible. They've been kind of weeding themselves off of that a little bit, but I still think that they always want to give you real weight to be like, no, no, you don't have to stumble across it organically. We'll put someone there to tell you, oh, you can go to this bar and then you can ask this person, or you can hear about this story from this person. And it's like, or you could just let the story unfold. You could just let them go. You could just trust that your game is just so inherently fun that as gamers, I think most of us have something of a completionist tendency within us where even if you don't complete the game to 100%, we want to be like, oh, we kind of saw every area of the map though. We may not have done every side quest within the map, but we kind of saw, the most of the designs and, most of the work that the artists have put in. But Ubisoft is extremely reluctant to trust that, you know. Obviously, single player games I think are even more so in the guided path, but that's because they are, so not single player games, but linear games, are more linear. So you kind of will hit everything, or at least most of everything that the developer wants you to hit. But that's a different conversation. We're talking about open world games. So I thought Ghost of Tsushima was somewhere closer to Breath of the Wild, and that was to its advantage. But I thought that Horizon Forbidden West was closer to Ubisoft, to be honest, and that was to its disadvantage because immediately when you first play Horizon Forbidden West, it will show you machine sites where the machines are, and I think it will give you like little question marks. But I'm like, how does Aloy intuit that there's something interesting in that area? She has no way of knowing that. And I'm like, Forbidden West is a big enough world. It's a vibrant enough world. You don't have to put a question mark somewhere on the map to tell me that, oh, go over there. I can eventually find my way there. And yes, maybe I will miss that content, but in reality, if I'm enjoying it enough, I will stumble upon it. Trust your game, trust your systems. And Ghost of Tsushima, like I said, was much better in that regard, but it still did have like question marks where I was like, how would Jin Sakai know that there's going to be this thing over here? Another thing that they did is that they will bring these little foxes, these little birds, these little animals, and of course they could still have it in Ghost of Yotei. That's no problem. But again, to me, it felt like we don't trust that you will find this through exploration. So here, let us guide you to it. Let us take you away from it. And I think the first two or three times it was definitely cool to have the bird swoop in and kind of show you where something is. But if you ever decided not to follow that bird, it started to feel extremely inorganic because eventually over time, what will keep happening is that as soon as you cross a certain mark, a certain line in the sand, that bird will just come swooping in every single time. And it's kind of like, well, it starts to feel a little bit like a video game. It starts to feel a little bit like, hey, follow me so I can stop annoying you every single time you come through this area because I want to take you to that shrine that's all the way over there. So I hope that they are much more trusting because if from the state of play, it really seems that they have tried to be. But I hope that if there are things like the birds and everything like that, you don't have to make it for come and show me every time where the shrine is. It's okay, even if it's like only happens at once every 4 times that I come through the area. It will make the time that it does come feel a little bit more like a surprise and less like a game mechanic that I can eventually find where the trigger line is. So that's just one of the things that I really enjoyed about the state of play. I thought that this world, it seems so fascinating to me. It felt like its own character. And it felt like a character that was not trying to serve the role of the video game, kind of purpose. The I've been watching a show recently, right? And I think the show is called Foundation, and it's a sci-fi show. Honestly, it's a very big disappointment, but it's on Apple TV. Some people like it. I honestly don't really understand why, but to each their own. But one thing that I must have issue with is that it doesn't feel like the world exists outside of the purview of the protagonist, right? Like honestly, there are some that you can obviously understand that yeah, this world, because it's like one that's like an emperor, so obviously he's going to be important and everything like that. But for me, this is a world that has trillions of people in existence and hundreds of planets that are all different, very much like a Star Wars setting, in that way. But much like Star Wars, it always kind of has this feel of like, oh well, unless the main character is on screen, then everything just pauses until they come and eventually solve the issue, you know? So for me, that's one thing that I've been noticing in media where I really enjoy media where it feels like the protagonist is important because it is their narrative that we are following, but there is a much wider world beyond the realm of that narrative that honestly doesn't give a fuck about this one person. Like I think that's really hard to do in media because imagine if let's say in a video game, you're playing a video game, you're the main protagonist, of course you're doing the things, but then there's like other quests and everything else going on, and they can get resolved by themselves without you ever interacting with them. That will be possibly content that you could participate in, but if you don't, it just fixes itself. It just comes to a resolution on its own. So on one hand, it's like you have to craft that content, but then you also have to craft it specifically for it to never be interacted with the player. And yet, what they will give in return is this idea that this is a living, breathing world that doesn't need to wait upon you. Like, if a person needs a package delivered and you come through the town and they're like, hey, could you take that package to another town? And you say no, they will just do it. Like, they would just find someone else because you're not the only um forward you know what I mean? Like you're not the only force that moves things forward in that world. There's other people that can deliver the package. There are mercenaries that could take it. There are delivery men that could take it. There are runners. There's fucking porters from Death Stranding that could take it. You know. Whereas in Death Stranding, for example, another game that I really really like, that world is completely on standby unless Sam is actually in motion, right? Like that world only moves if Sam moves. Sam is the only one apparently that can reconnect the United States. Sam is the only one that can make certain these deliveries. If you don't make them, no one ever comes to you and says, "Hey, I'll just take it off you and I'll make the delivery. You're taking too long." Like the world is at a standstill unless you, the gamer, and the protagonist of that world actually do something about it. Like Higgs and his situation with what is it with Fragile, for example, they never resolve it on their own. They need you, the player, to have an input in it. And that's okay. It's fine. I enjoy it. I'm not asking for every single game to have the same objectives. That's fine. But I really do want a world where it feels like this world is alive beyond my story, my narrative, and kind of like the lore around me as a protagonist. This is very hard to do. I think there's many games that sell you the illusion that other things are happening. For example, The Witcher 3, it had a political component that Geralt was aware of and he was impacted by, but he was hardly ever in direct control of, whether one nation goes to war with another. It always felt like there was this other thing behind the scenes that was going on. That was really part of the narrative. I think it's really cool to be able to do that in terms of a narrative perspective. But man, I would love a game where they do it mechanically, like where if you have a companion and that companion has like a personal side quest, you know, the ones, the Mass Effect type of side quest where they have this thing that you have to go to achieve, and they will come to you on a random day, and they're like, "Yep, I have to go tonight. Like, this is the moment to achieve this thing, or I have to let it go forever, and I'm not gonna let it go forever." And I would love it if you could say no, like I've got other things to do, and not for a narrative perspective where I have to choose between like one person to help versus the other person to help. No, just like on a random gameplay day, like come tonight to this place if you want to help me, or don't show up. And if you don't show up, they're just going to do it. And maybe they die without your help. Maybe they get injured without your help. Maybe they just resolve it without your help. And then eventually, maybe there's like, fallout instead of being like unlocking a relationship level or a loyalty level. You just don't. They could still be your buddy, but they're just like, yeah, you didn't stick out your neck for me. So, final mission, I'm not going to show up. I think this is something that Bethesda games, for all of the flaws, they really try to do. They really try to make you feel like their world is alive beyond you. But I feel like Bethesda has never really had the trust in themselves to be able to execute on that in a mechanical way. They want to tell you that all of these decisions will have an impact, but then they don't trust that that impact can be so large, that again, it can happen without your input. But anyways, one thing that I love are the systems that they have put in here around that exploration. So if we go back to looking at, for example, this state of play, what I love is
But
this
for a quicker
idea
route, you can always buy a traveler's map from.
that you can buy a traveler's map, okay, from a cartographer, which is a great thing because it sort of it makes sense in the layout of the world that there will be people that go around, and of course they take maps of places and they know things about places that they might know that a person is in trouble, or this particular farmstead is being hassled by these particular people, whatever it is. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I also do like the
The
mechanic of kind of
cartographer.
like you can place it yourself where you want, kind of that map to be. Or maybe this is a game where you have to like match, everything properly so that things line up. I'm not sure looking at this if the actual card moves. Yeah, it seems like you have to match because it seems to me from here that this place here, right? All you're going to see there is already like pre rendered. This is the place, and you have to come and manually place it on the map because you have to kind of like I guess find yourself and everything like that. So yeah, once you get it right, it shows a little bit of things around, and I think that's really really cool. I really hope that this map is extremely minimal, even when you've been able to purchase a map like that, or at least give you the mode. One thing that I will give what is it, Horizon Forbidden West credit for is that you can go a lot of the time into the settings of the game and you can remove those map markers that don't make sense contextually to the story. So for example, I remove all of the machine sites because I'm like, unless Aloy has been through here, she has no way of knowing what kind of machines are there, you know. What I also remove were a lot of the other way markers to like points of interest because again, I'm like, if I have a point of interest, just let me discover it. So one thing that I loved in seeing in this one over here was this idea of this so what is it, the spyglass. So you see this, you pull out your spyglass, it's got a little compass there for you, so that's kind of helpful. And you see this part over here? Look at the generic name that it gives it. He just calls it a large pagoda, and which I love. It's like you don't know what's there. You don't know that this is like I don't know, Emmanuel's farmstead. You don't know that this is like Emmanuel real estate agency. You just know that there is this structure, that's a pagoda apparently, sticking out. So you're just going to call it something generic. Then when you get there, you might find out some information, and you're like, oh look, it's David's pawn shop. Yeah, pawn, as in the chess, that pawn. Actually, I've just used a different PAWN. That's what pawn, not that. fine. The point is, I love the fact that it gives you a generic name that gives you no other indication as to what you're going to find there. So I don't know, man. I love the look of this game. I love the world that it's in. There's so many things to say about it. The fact that, for example, it seems that they have replaced the stand systems with different weapons, which is cool because, again, narratively, it might make a lot more sense because Jin was trained to be a samurai until like he was in his 30s or 40s, right? Whereas this person's, it seems that training was interrupted, so she probably had to like learn on the fly to use every advantage, which to talk about. I love the look of this. A lot of people are saying that this is, not a graphically huge improvement over the PlayStation 4 version. And I think this is just nostalgia talking because in reality, I think that I see a lot more density in the foliage and everything like that, a lot more fidelity, especially when you have a vista that is overlooking a really, really huge area, right? Now, I'm just going to go back a little bit here. I'm just going to kind of have the whole exploration. This moment was cool with the SSD kind of speed. I do wish that traveling with the horse was even faster. Like really show us what the SSD can do, so that I feel like when I'm running with the horse through those flower fields, that it really feels like, man, this SSD is being put to work. But hey, you know what? It is what it is. I'm sure it will be perfectly adequate for what we have here, and be able to switch back and forth within the time zones. I like that. I like that. So, man, I don't know. The other complaint that I've seen people make is that, oh, this is more of the same. And I mean, we've talked on this channel many times about how gamers are completely insufferable nowadays. Listen, sequels are going to be more of the same as the thing that preceded them. That's why they are sequels. We don't go to Harry Potter and then we are like, oh, what is the next Harry Potter going to have? Oh, yeah, more wizards. No, look, it's the wizarding world. Like, I don't understand it. It only seems to happen with like PlayStation games, to my knowledge. Like, people say the same thing about Horizon, for example. They say the same thing about God of War Ragnarok. Oh my god, the same boat entering animation. Like, oh my god. Bah. Listen, if you do the analysis, you may find out that this game has the same horse riding animations. Like I don't know. Another game that by the way, that I want to just give a quick shout out to is that Clear Obscure Expedition 33 does a very similar thing to the exploration as I was talking about Breath of the Wild, where unlike Breath of the Wild, it does have a main marker for where the main story will need to go, but everything else they show you on the map what it is, right? Um, and they trust you to go there. And if you don't go there, then that's perfectly it. One of my favorite moments in Breath of the Wild, sorry, not Breath of the Wild, but Clear Obscure Expedition 33, I think they call it the Island of the Eye or something like that. And basically, it's a very small area, and there is a bridge, and the bridge is kind of broken, but the broken part is suspended in the air. It's like besides it, right? And you can cross through to the other side without kind of moving this bit so that you can make the bridge whole again. Beyond that, there's an adversary, there's a boss fight that is quite obvious, really large character. You as soon as you walk in, you pretty much see that that's your ultimate destination, and that's it. There is a switch somewhere, but the mechanic as to how to activate the switch and where that switch is completely left up to you. That's the entire area. So if you know what you're doing because you already solved it before, or I suppose you could have used a guide, you can, unlock that bridge. You can move it back in like, I don't know, a minute tops, maybe 2 minutes if you're, just taking your time to walk around instead of sprinting. But when I first went there the first time, I completely understood as a gamer that obviously I can move this bridge back. Obviously, there's a switch somewhere, but I didn't know what it was. And the game didn't tell me. First of all, this is a completely optional area. So, first getting to it was completely my choice, and nothing prompted me to go there. There were no quest markers, there were no question marks on the map, there were no comments about it from anyone, there's no NPCs telling me to go there. There's nothing. There's nothing but pure gamer intrinsic desire to simply see more of this world. And when I get there, there's no help. There are no interactions. There's no one telling you like, hey, or we don't have the equipment to solve this puzzle yet, or we don't, oh, we should look for this, or hey, shoot that thing over there. Oh, I think is that there was a moment where I found what I needed to do, and I stood right in front of it, and I waited. Is anyone in the party going to make a comment to be like, hey, by the way, like if we want to get across that bridge, I think we should do this thing? No. Part of that may be the fact that Clear Obscure has a much smaller team with a much smaller studio, so they do not have the time to like record like every single potential, kind of like assistant, your voice line that would normally help you. Maybe, but maybe like Breath of the Wild, they just trust that you will eventually figure it out. Or maybe they trust that at the very least you will ask someone about it, because I got my friends to play the game, and my friend is in this area, and I'm on PlayStation with him, and we're talking. And then he's like, "Hey, there's this area where there's this suspended bridge, and I don't know how the fuck to cross it." And I was like, "Oh, I remember that area. Let me show you." So we start a share screen, share play or whatever. So he shares his screen on PlayStation, which, by the way, such an amazing feature, right? And I was like, "Yep, this is what you need to do." And that just felt really good because he was stumped, and as a friend, I was able to help him. Again, because the developers just trusted that you will figure it out, because you're gamers and this is what you do, and you love this world and you love these things, so you put in the work, you put in the effort. Now, I've got to admit to you guys, like when I first got across that area, I was stunned for like a good 15 minutes straight. Like I was like, bro. And even when I figured out, what I needed to do, it still kind of stumped me where, because there's a sequence of things you need to do, and where you need to be for each one of those is not necessarily the most obvious thing on earth. So it took me 15 minutes to eventually cross that bridge, and I was able to help my friend after he had spent about 10 minutes looking for it as well. So, anyways, the point is, we both suck at games, and we should definitely have those voice assistant lines because that shit can get frustrating. But no, Ghost of Yotei, I think, is going to be a phenomenal game. I think that in what they have tried to do, they have exuded mindfulness. They have exuded this sense of breath, this sense of openness, this sense of intrinsic trust in your capacity as gamers to want to play these games. I think that they have kept the core elements that makes a ghost story a ghost story. Kept the core elements that makes a ghost combat. But then they have added things that are unique to this particular entry that may not even feature in the next entry. Like if there is a third game, maybe they will change things up again. Letting go of the stances in favor of weapon switching. I've heard some people say that they are not so much a fan of that, but I am. It's okay for every game, every entry in the series to kind of have its own identity, to kind of have its own thing. A little bit like a Final Fantasy. It's okay for you to play a little differently from what you expect. I think it's perfectly fine, so it's going to be interesting to play it. I'm not sure if I'm going to play it at launch. Probably not, to be honest. As you guys know, my opinion of PlayStation at the moment isn't extremely sky high. Um, but I think that this is a fantastic product, nevertheless. And my grievance is ultimately with Hiroki Totoki, not with Sucker Punch as a studio. So even though I might not play it the day that it launches, I still think that I am extremely, extremely grateful for such a game. Another thing that they did with the card system, with the wolf pack system, with the shrines of the reflection, which they kind of tweaked. Oh, one thing that I will say, one of my biggest grievances with Breath of the Wild specifically, and a lot of games to follow, actually a lot of open world games, is there are too many of the things to do. And I don't mean that they have too much variety. In fact, that's the issue. The issue is that they have about 5 or 6 distractions, right? But then they have like 100 of those. So for example, the shrines in Breath of the Wild. Way too many. There's like 112. That should stop being fun after like 30. After 30 shrines, I was like, I was done. If there were 30 shrines only in Breath of the Wild, I think it would have been, and honestly, just 30 of the best ones. Because listen, shrines, they all vary. Some of them were like 1 out of 10, to be honest. Others were like 10 out of 10. If they had kept only the ones that were between 7 and 10 out of 10, they would have had maybe 30 or 40 shrines. And every time you would have come across one in such that big, massive world, oh man, you would have been like, bro. I still remember, I think it was called like the two, it was like the ones with the mountains, like the ones on the mountains. I think it's got two towers or two mountains or twin shrines or whatever. Point is, everybody remembers that one. And it was one where you needed to go into one shrine and do something, then go into the other shrine, and then remember what you did in the previous one and do something there. And I think maybe you go back to the original shrine. But the point is, it was such a cool thing, such a cool moment. If they had had only like, 30 shrines, but 20 of those special moments that I remember years later, uh, it would have been so much better. Too many shrines in Breath of the Wild. To take it to a much more historical, much more ancient perspective, Assassin's Creed 2, 100 feathers? Really? What about 12? What about 12 feathers? Just perfectly nice number. 13, maybe a baker's dozen, maximum. Maximum. Take Ghost of Tsushima. Too many shrines. Too many foxes. I'm sorry, man. Too many birds. Like, I don't need 67 of these things, man. How about 16? How about how about 12? Yeah, I think 12 is such a perfect number. 12 is the perfect number of having a type of activity. You can have 12 of one thing, and then you can create something else. For example, the bamboo strikes. Have six times. Let me trap that just 6 times. Boom. Enough times that you can make it simple at the beginning, make it a little bit complex towards the middle, and maybe have a little bit of a twist at the end. Boom. Done. Don't overplay those ideas. One thing I always said in Horizon Forbidden West especially, too many side quests. Too many side quests. I'm sorry. Like, I played them all. You could have gotten rid of a third of those. Let's be honest. You could have gotten rid of a third of those, and it would have been fine. It would have been better, actually. It would have been better. Listen, not every single area of the world needs a quest associated with it. That's where the breath comes from. Like so many times in Breath of the Wild, you're not solving anything. You're not running any errands. You're not doing anything. Obviously, there's always some kind of reward for your exploration. That's fine, but there's this is intrinsic to you because it's the discovery that the reward. It's not the completion of a task on a checklist. So again, you don't need side quests. So many side quests on Horizon. It's okay. It's fine. You don't need so many armor sets. Let's face it, man. It's like there's like five that are useful. Everything else is kind of like, no, you don't need it. It's okay. All right. It's okay. Just give us really good armor at the beginning of the game, and by the time we get to the middle, we find the next one, make it a really big step up. Then the next one, make it that a really big step up. And then when you do that 5 times, you're post end game. You're fantastic. You're great. I think that these open world games, if they have activities, you can have mini games, but keep it constrained, man. Like those shrines of reflection, maximum 12. Those hot springs, maximum 9. Those what is it? Those fox shrines and little things like that that birds might take you to. You know what? Give us 7. You know? And so eventually, every single time that we encounter this thing, it feels nice, it feels good, it feels new. Like for example, the duels. Have 10 duels. Good. 10. It's great. You remember each and every single one of them, will never get bored of them, and then make them replayable. If a person wants to like try again with a different strategy, make it so that after the end game they can, rewind and they can go back and they can play a duel again. Fantastic. It's great. It's lovely. Like, what do you guys think? Tell me. Because I really do think that a lot of these open worlds, I love them. I really do. And I do my best to only play a huge open world game when I'm in the mood for a huge open world game so I can get something out of that experience. I can get the best out of it. But even then, man, I've replayed Horizon Forbidden West like twice at least now. But every time I'm like, this world is too big. There are too many things to do. Most people won't even do 40% of the content here. And this kind of speaks to what Sean later was saying, with like these games are too expensive. And honestly, I think the reason they're too expensive is that you have too much geometry, you have too much area, and you try to fill up every single corner with something to do. Let a forest be a forest. You don't have to give me there's this quest in Horizon Forbidden West, yeah, where it's like it's an old warrior, an old man that has dementia, and his daughter is like, oh, can you go look for my old man? And I was like, nah, bitch, why don't you do it? It's your dad. Like, the fuck are you sending me for? Like, I could have understood if she came along with me, but I was like, why are you sending me? And then I realized that the only reason they're sending me is because the developers wanted me to go and see this, rainforest or this forest area that they had created. But the thing is, I'd already been through that area, I'd already seen it. And I was like, I didn't need you to send me here. I found it on my own. The quest, it was fine. It was a perfectly passable quest, you know, but it was unnecessary. And I felt like honestly half of the side quests in Horizon Forbidden West, they were kind of like that. They were like the 5 or 6 out of 10 quests, and it's like they were just there to show you what an area existed. Like, oh, go and climb this mountain because of this reason, and suddenly now you know that this part of the world exists. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. Even if you want to have geometry, it's fine for like a tundra to just be a tundra. To just there's no one that needs up there. Everybody's cool. Everybody's fine. There's no revenge story to go do. There's no plot, to follow. There's nothing. There's just this area. Now, obviously, in the world of Horizon, this makes sense that there are machines there. That's fine. That's perfectly good. Always have some kind of gameplay thing to do. But I don't need 100 quests. You know, like you'll tell me about that. Like for example, for me, yeah, I don't know anything about Ghost of Yotei, but when we talk about side quests, not like I want to talk about tertiary side quests specifically. So not the main quest and not the side quests of like your main characters that support you and the main NPCs, but just side quests of like random NPCs, like a woman in a village or a I don't know, a merchant that needs to go and hunt this particular legendary animal, like those kind of things. I'm like, give me 47 of those. 47. And then you can still have a legendary animal, but no quest that points to him. I either just discover him or I don't. That's fine. Like for example, again, I'm gonna draw heavy exploration from Clear Obscure. There are these enemies that are called chromatic enemies that are like kind of the legendary enemies of the game. Some of them can be more difficult than the final boss of the game. I mean the final story boss of the game, not the final boss. Simon is a piece of shit, But trauma aside, the point is there are these enemies that are dotted around the map. Some of them are on the world map, some of them are in the sky, easily visible. Others are like in the recess of a recess of a recess, and you can easily miss them. But the game never tells you. You just stumble across them. And I think, from what I know about Elden Ring, which very little because I haven't played it, nor have I watched someone play it, but from what I've heard is that the same thing can happen in Elden Ring. You just suddenly there's a legendary level enemy, and you can go up against them, or you may not, or whatever. But there's nothing that forces you to go there. So I'm like, yeah, 47 quests, man, 47 total tertiary quests. Like for example, for your mainline quest, you may have 26. For your little characters that are part of your team, maybe have another 20, and then 47 other quests that are like, here is a person telling you to complete this thing. Cool. Maybe like 27. maybe 30, 33. 33 sounds good. 33 sounds great. 33 sounds the right number. 33 tertiary quests. That makes a lot of sense. 333. 33 other quests. And then the rest of the time, you can still have legendary enemies. You can still have legendary duels. You can still have legendary bosses. But nothing in the world has to tell you about it. I like that. I like that. Because I think, again, it goes back to the start of this little conversation of mine, which is Breath of the Wild did that. Breath of the Wild had times where you would just stumble on a really cool enemy or a really cool enemy encampment, and no one was telling you. Because at the end of the day, the developers trusted you to find it. And they trusted that you will love the game enough to make your way towards some of the coolest things they designed for you. So it felt like a genuine surprise. It felt like a genuine reward because I've got to tell you, a lot of the times, especially in Breath of the Wild, but even in Clear Obscure, sometimes the rewards, the loot or whatever it is, the extrinsic motivation for your discovery, sometimes they're perfectly fine, you know, perfectly adequate. But I feel so much more rewarded for having found it myself. And I think that I want more and more open world games, especially from Western developers, to have that same intrinsic trust. The Ubisoft era of open world game design needs to end. And I am really looking forward for the Breath of the Wild era to continue to thrive and become our new staple of open world games. Games that once again trust that gamers want to play games.